I want to thank Gary for his great music so far. I love the meditation, but I also love these new tunes from his My 88 Keys Volume 2, which is part of what he did while he was quarantined, hence the title. And also I want to thank Gloria for taping the reading for us. We're continuing with our Who You Are series today, guiding ourselves to listen to the spiritual messages about who we are spiritually as individuals so that we can grow and thrive in all aspects of our lives. And what I'm aware of is that when we take good care of ourselves, we thrive better. So today's topic is self-care as a spiritual practice. Last week we focused on echoes of the past and learning to let go of those things that don't serve us or those ideas that we picked up from other people along the way that really aren't our own beliefs. And this week we're going to look at how we can enhance our spirituality by taking care of our physical and our spiritual lives. So your question for this week is this: what's the one choice that I can make today to remember to restore my own self so that I can love well? Now that question might make better sense after the talk, but for now, just let me repeat it. What's the one choice that I might make today to remember to restore my own self so that I might love well? And maybe a better question, since we had Gary's beautiful songs, is what's the one choice that I might make today to remember to take care and to take one step at a time and go where I'm led? So this week we had the ministers gathering online, not the way we originally planned, but many of us have become accustomed to things being a lot different than they were a year ago. We have different ways of doing things. In our current situation of change, it seems like self-care is even more important topic than it used to be. Perhaps because the disruption in our lives has been for such an extended period of time that it's beginning to take a toll on us. I know for many of us, especially myself, I would love things to get back to normal. Not a new normal, but back to the way of living where I could hug and gather with the community. And I'd love for that to be a part of my life again. And for now, that's not the case. So taking care of myself and each of you taking care of yourselves is especially important. And I was fortunate this week to spend about 14 hours in the ministers gathering with other ministers and with great speakers. And part of it was a private concert with Ricky Byers, which I can say was incredible because her music, like Gary's music for me, touches my heart and allows me a very deep level of connecting with my soul. So I have to admit that it came at a good time for me because moving the center and the usual demands of ministry have impacted my inner peace and calm lately. So it was just perfect timing to have the ministers gathering and to have that opportunity to just be with other ministers and to learn some things. One day was, how do we take care of ourselves? Emma Curtis Hopkins in Scientific Mental Practice wrote this: complaining and whining are only exhibitions of great desert spots in your character. You must fill up deserts with rain and fertilizer. So you must transform your moments of complaining by praise and descriptions of the good in the universe. Now that's quite a message. I have to say that the good in the universe this week for me was being able to attend that ministers gathering. And I'm aware that complaining and whining don't help, but sometimes we do it anyway. So I'm going to offer you a little bit of advice. If you feel like you have to complain, give yourself 10 minutes to do it. And then complain all you want in the privacy of the bathroom or your own home if you live alone or nobody else is there. It's just not going to help us to put out into the universe words of complaint. Because what we know is what we put out comes back to us. And not only that, it comes back multiplied abundantly. So none of us want that. So let's try to remember to start a transformation today. And in that tone, I'd like you to start by thinking of yourself as a butterfly. Butterflies are the most emblematic totem animal, and because they symbolize personal transformation. We all know that butterflies emerge from the cocoon of a caterpillar, and the caterpillar literally dissolves its own life to become a new form, which is the butterfly. This is relevant because you can't have a new beginning of self-care if you're not willing to let go of some of the old habits and old ways of being. So unless you're willing to let some things dissolve, you're not going to really start taking care of yourself in the way that would be a true transformation. Now, I know I am one with the all of it all, like Gary's song said, with all things, all people, all life, all love, the good, the beautiful, the pure, the bountiful. It was such a beautiful meditation song, and it's so appropriate for self-care, for recognizing that when we care for ourselves, we're caring for not only ourselves, but for everyone, because we are one with the all of it. I can say for myself that this week I made a lot of decisions about my life, especially as your spiritual leader. And so I'm hoping when some of you get a phone call this week asking and having me request your help, that the answer will be yes. And I want to tell you right now, only say yes if it's in alignment with your own self-care. Because I'm going to build this community back the way it was, where a lot of people were participating in having the center move from week to week, and I wasn't doing everything. So back to that butterfly. So a caterpillar comes to school in a jar, and the class watches the caterpillar each day as it grows and changes. And soon it disappears into a hard shell called a chrysalis. Where did it go? Well, the transformation is an amazing story, and Larrye-Marie Heyl wrote a little section about the emerging butterfly. And in her book, she talks about these imaginal cells. They resonate at a different frequency than the cells of the caterpillar. And they're so totally different than the caterpillar cells that the caterpillar's immune system thinks that they're enemies. And so the cells of the caterpillar try to gobble them up and gulp them up. But these imaginal cells are so important that they just continue to appear. And more of them happen to appear. And pretty soon, the caterpillar's own immune system can't destroy them anymore. And so over time, these cells survive, and an amazing thing happens. Not only do they survive, but these tiny little imaginal cells actually start to clump together. They form friendly little groups. And then they all start to resonate together, one to the other. And after a while, the clumps actually start to cluster together. So there's little clumps all over the place, and they start becoming clusters. And a long string of imaginal cells, all resonating at the same frequency and passing information from one to the other, are there inside the chrysalis. And then a wave of good news travels throughout this little system, and it lurches and it heaves, and along comes the beautiful butterfly. And at some point, this entire long string of imaginal cells realizes that all of them are together, but some of them are different from the caterpillar. And something new, this beautiful butterfly, has been birthed, and the cells know that now it's time for them individually to start doing other functions that keep the caterpillar alive. So they're part of this family, and they share the work. And what I find so beautiful about that is each new butterfly cell takes on a different job. Otherwise, we wouldn't have butterflies that were flitting from one little bush to another. Each cell begins to just worry about what's their part of the family's job. And every other cell encourages it to do just that. And it's just a great way to look at organization. Personal transformation work, especially transforming your self-care habits, can be exactly like that butterfly. First of all, we have that old thought, that old way of being, and that's the caterpillar. And then once we have enough of that old way, we decide that we want to become something different. And something inside of us just says, this is it. I don't need to be that old way. I can find a new way. And we can wrap ourselves in a new idea. We can find people that will support us. We can read books that might tell us how we can do that. But we wrap ourselves in this new idea of how to be. And finally, those old ideas dissolve and something wonderful happens. We start behaving in a different way. So let's look at how we can dissolve those things that are no longer serving us, so that we can become stronger, so that we can be the highest and best of who we are right now in our present way, all because we've made the choice to let go of the things that aren't serving us and to take care of our own selves. Our topic today is self-care as a spiritual practice. And this self-care is a spiritual practice because it takes courage. It takes perseverance. It takes aligning yourself with the spirit that you know you are. It takes you knowing that you're one with the all of it all, and yet you are individually you. So I want to talk about how we go about embracing new habits and beliefs. Because last week, as I spoke of echoes of the past that impact our lives, I also talked about breaking old patterns and the patterns that are keeping us from manifesting our highest good. Well, what about those old habits that keep you from taking care of who you are and who you're becoming? Isn't it time to embrace new habits and beliefs so that you focus on your own self-care? Last week I quoted some of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay on self-reliance, and the essay begins this way: Ne te quesaveris extra, which means do not seek for things outside of yourself. An essay on self-reliance that's saying, do not seek for things outside of yourself. Isn't this exactly what we do when we forget our own self-care and seek for things outside of ourselves? A lot of times I like to talk about the fatal trio of F words: fame, fortune, and fleeing. Now, if you're into fame or fortune, for whatever the reasons, perhaps that's your path. And there's nothing wrong with having fame or fortune as long as your whole life isn't wrapped around that. There's other F words like flaunting and fallaciousness, and they might also be apt to how you don't take care of yourself. But often when we're seeking fame and fortune, we mislead others to get what we want. Sometimes we flaunt our own skills and achievements in ways that are hurtful to other people. There are all these false ways to feel good about ourselves and to believe that we have succeeded when in fact we've truly only hurt our own beingness. Fame, fortune, whatever it is that you might be seeking, I want to talk about that F word and focus on that F word of fleeing, which is defined as running away from something. How often do we flee from our true selves? How often do we flee from our own self-care or postpone it to our own detriment because there's a deadline, there's a request, someone else seems to need something, and it seems at the moment to be crucial. Taking care of yourself is essential to living a spiritual life. Finding time to allow your body to rest, to just sit and listen to that still small voice within you is important to that self-care. This week in the gathering, I was reminded by Shaki Butler that our bodies hold memories of our lives, and that the lives of our ancestors are also held in the cells of our bodies. She quoted from My Grandmother's Hands by Rasma Manickam, and he wrote this book about mending our hearts and bodies. And here's the quote. We heal primarily in and through the body, not just through the rational brain. We can all create more room and more opportunities for growth in our nervous systems. But we do this primarily through what our bodies experience and not through what we think or realize or cognitively figure out. Now that was a great reminder for me of the many times I've studied the mind-body connection, and yet we don't overcome hurt or exhaustion or pain by talking about it. It's not to say that prayers and positive beliefs can't make a difference in our healing process. And our bodies need rest to rejuvenate. Our emotions, as well as our physical needs, must be met for us to live a joyful life. I love this concept of legacy, which was another topic of Shaki's presentation. What legacy are we leaving? And how can we show our children and our grandchildren that living from the heart is vital to this world and to having a world that actually does work for everybody? I'm going to ask you right now, ask yourself, what legacy are you leaving? Shaki talked about the intergenerational drama that we hold in our bodies. And she also talked about this default mode network, which is a brain system that supports integration of the self with the social world. She went on to talk a lot about our place of creativity and when we're not paying attention to the external world, what happens. And in other words, our creativity is capable of healing drama, but only when we become still and calm so we can hear the message. Now, I plan to talk about that a lot next week because it's definitely related to how we can change the world. So keep that in mind. Meanwhile, let's get back to self-care. As I was listening to the wonderful guest speakers in our gathering, it became evident to me that God is always evident through the storms of my life. God showed up for me this week in the form of quotes and ideas that brought me back to light, many of which I think were quite relevant to self-care. Like those words of Rosman in My Grandmother's Hands that I spoke of earlier. But I think the quote that impacted me the most was one that Susan Taylor, the author of our book that we read from today in the reading, stated, and it was at the very beginning of her presentation, so it just kind of set the tone for me for the day. And this is what it said: I must have a day for me. If I don't take time to restore myself, to fulfill my own needs, I won't love you well. I'm going to say that again because those words hit my heart like a bullet that was bursting through me and awakening me to what I know is essential for me, being able to love well. So here's the quote again. I must have a day for me. If I don't take time to restore myself, to fulfill my own needs, I won't love you well. Mahatma Gandhi was quite wise when he made that statement. Needless to say, after that statement, since it's at the beginning of the week, I was glued to my Zoom screen, watching and listening to all the amazing things that the authors and the editors and who these people were being and how they were sharing with us. And some more of Susan's great advice that we got in the Q&A section was, actually there was so much that I boiled it down to 4 things that I really wanted to share with you. The first one was, each day before doing anything, fill yourself with gratitude. She already had my attention, but boy, now she was talking my language. This is my philosophy coming back to me. The second was, make an essential list of things to do each day. Not a long list, only essential things that have to be done that day. Well, I flunked on this one because my lists are usually really long, but it was a reminder that if I'm going to take care of myself and feel like I've actually made it through the day and done what I said I was going to do, then make the list be a list of only the essential things that have to be done that day. The third one was, surround yourself with the smartest people you can find and treat them well. Well, hey, I'm really good at surrounding myself with smart people, and I attempt to treat them well most of the time, especially when I'm taking care of myself. It's easier for me to treat them well. The fourth one was, get negaholics out of your life. Now, I love that word, negaholics. I figured I wasn't doing too badly. I got 2 out of 4. It was that essential list and the negaholics thing that I have to work on. And I'm developing new habits around that list making. And as for those negaholics, she had a wonderful way of letting people go when she was managing her magazine. And I think that it probably works in human relationships as well. She told them what they were good at and how what they were doing wasn't working. She was clear to us that people always know deep down when they're not delivering. They always at some level know what it is that's not working in relationships. And I believe that it's true in life relationships as well. It's not any of our jobs to teach someone else how to be positive. We can demonstrate it for them, and if they continue to be a negaholic and all you hear is complaints, remember the opening quote about no complaining, it doesn't do any good, then it's time maybe to let them go, to let them not be a part of our lives. So a relevant question at this point is God evident throughout the storms of your life? Are you noticing storms and allowing your spiritual practices, the way that God becomes evident to you, to not happen because you're so busy worrying about the storm? You know, here in Louisiana with so many hurricanes this season, we're aware of how they come announced. Hurricanes we know about sometimes weeks in advance. They're way out in the Gulf, but they're going to be a hurricane, and they pretty much can tell us we don't know what level of hurricane it's going to be, but it's heading our way, not sure where it's going to hit. So we're really accustomed to listening to the weather and knowing what's coming in terms of Mother Nature's storms. Unfortunately, we're not quite as good at knowing what's coming in terms of our own personal and emotional storms in our lives. What I notice is storms in my life don't come with advance warning. And when they do come with advance warning, I'm often so busy that I fail to listen to the broadcast in my mind about the upcoming storm. So I've ignored all the messages to get prepared and to take care of what's essential for the upcoming stormy times. When I start to feel exhausted or unappreciated, or those times when I know that self-care is required, those are the times I should be preparing by increasing my spiritual practices. relaxing my mind, doing more meditation or spiritual readings. For me, singing songs is a great way to relax. Those are the times to do the things so that I don't ignore that still small voice telling me to take care of myself. Self-care so I can love well. Not only love myself well, but be able to love others well. When my buckets are empty, I have nothing to give. We're going to work on that in the community discussion this week, so I invite you to dial in and join us, and I promise you it's going to be great personal work. It's often not easy to separate out what our own behavior patterns are from patterns that we've adopted for others. We watched our mothers take a back seat maybe to everybody else in the household and always caring for the other people. We watched our friends who maybe were really confident and maybe we weren't so confident, but they were always go, go, go and the center of attention and knew how to engage other people. The truth is, we don't know what's beneath the surface for all those other people whose behaviors we're watching. And for them, some of their behaviors might be exactly what they need for good self-care. What's important is that we pay attention to our own behaviors. And when we begin to notice that we need self-care, remember to ask your heart, what is it that I need right now? Look at all the behaviors that are going on. Is the behaviors that you're doing supporting your own well-being? Or would it be better for you to do something else? Is all of this busyness in your life supporting you? Or would it be better if you just shut down a little bit and maybe had some quiet time? One of my ministerial instructors, whom I dearly loved, was Reverend Dr. Alice Bandy, and she said this: claim your own consciousness. Give up old ideas of others and feel free in your own mind. Feel free in your own mind. I started out today to ask you to be a butterfly. Well, for just a moment, I want you to revert yourself and now think of yourself as a caterpillar that's about to transform. You have all those imaginal cells that are developing, and perhaps you're gobbling them up, but your need for self-care is so important that those imaginal cells continue to appear. More and more of them. Pretty soon, just like the caterpillars, those cells start to resonate together at the same frequency and start to cluster together. And they start passing information from one cell to another inside that chrysalis. And that wave of good news travels throughout the system, and all of a sudden, something different happens. The caterpillar becomes a new, wonderful you birthed as a butterfly. The butterfly lets go of all the thoughts and habits and behaviors that kept the caterpillar crawling along, because the butterfly doesn't crawl along the leaves and the branches. It flies, it soars to high heights. And if you're fully being a butterfly and embracing yourself in self-care, you will soar to higher and higher heights within your beingness. Your spiritual practices will become very engaging and will touch your soul in a different way. So what are you waiting for? There's nothing wrong with being a caterpillar, and we need caterpillars. Without the caterpillars, we wouldn't have the butterflies. But I suspect, as Susan Taylor told the ministers, that you know where you're not delivering self-care that you need. You know for yourself where you're not delivering that self-care that you need. So I'm curious, do you want to love others well? Do you want to love yourself well? Dr. Petrie Weldes, who's a fellow minister, said this: welcome the challenge. This is your opportunity to turn to spirit, to stand for wholeness, to speak your truth. Do not become afraid or disheartened. You are supported in ways you cannot imagine, and you will make it through. So remember, take care of your well-being. Let those cosmic vibes have you singing. Self-care is a spiritual practice. Embrace it. Allow God to be evident in the storms of your life. No more fleeing from self-care because of deadlines or old beliefs or old habits that don't serve you. Remind yourself of the legacy that you're leaving for the children and the grandchildren of the world. When you take care of you, you can love well. You can be that beautiful butterfly that's soaring to high heights. So welcome the challenge. Remember that you're supported in ways you can't possibly imagine. You're supported in ways that perhaps all you have to do is ask for support. But I'm going to remind you of the question that we started out with. What's the one thing that you might do today to remember to restore your own self so that you might love well? I'm going to challenge you this week to notice the storms in your life and to start preparing for them. To listen when you feel those little nudges of the storm that's way out in the Gulf, but it's heading your way. Relax. Put more joy in your life. Take care of yourself. Let's pray. So just knowing that the divine is supporting each of us in all kinds of amazing ways. That God that is love and joy and ease and grace and comfort and freedom is moving through us from the soles of our feet to the top of our heads. And all of that love that the divine is who we are right here and right now. What I know to be the truth is that when each of us take care of ourselves, we heal whatever needs healing, and we learn to love more. We love others better, and we love ourselves more. What I know to be the truth is that self-care is indeed a spiritual practice. That spiritual practice that I know is essential to creating a world that works for everybody. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be the minister that is the part of this Center for Spiritual Living in Southeast Louisiana that gets to come into your lives through technology these days. I'm grateful for everybody that supports us in all that we're doing. I'm grateful to know that each person that has been watching this talk has found something within them that they know is a way that they can take better care of who they are and bring more joy into their own lives. And it's from all that gratitude that I release these words into the law of mind, spirit, and action, because I know the truth that God does the heavy lifting for us, that God says yes whenever we ask. The answer is always yes. So ask and it's given. Take care of yourself and you'll love well. So I can just know that it's already done. Release it. I say amen. And we can affirm it together. And so it is. And this is our time for our offertory blessing. It's a beautiful song. I invite you to sing along and just to really embrace the words. They're also about self-care.